So, just who exactly are trannies trying to fool? I mean, are they trying to fool themselves? Are they trying to fool the opposite sex? I mean, hell, are they trying to fool the same sex? I don't know, but it's pretty obvious that they're trying to fool somebody. A transgender knows what sex they were born. They know what sex they are. They know what sex that they can never be, which is the opposite one, which is the one that they try to change into. But they can't actually achieve that. There is no fully changing from one biological sex to the other one. The best you can hope for is a makeover, an image overhaul. You want to try to convince someone, yourself, the opposite sex, new people you meet, whoever, you're trying to convince them that you're the opposite biological sex than what you were born. And because they're trying to convince these people, yeah, and like I said, maybe they're trying to convince themselves, because there is no physical way that they can actually change their chromosomes in their body. There's no way that they can change sperm into eggs or eggs into sperm. Vice versa. There's no way to do it. So it comes back to the point, who are they trying to convince? And why are they trying to convince those people? Transgender is really just gender dysphoria. It's where someone feels ultimately like they should have been born the opposite sex. And whereas we used to treat that as a mental illness, we used to try to help these people realize that, look, you cannot become the opposite sex. You just need to live the way that you were born. But nowadays, we try to help them transition, in all different aspects, all sorts of different physical ways, through surgery, through body mutilation, get as close to the opposite sex as possible. But you really can't achieve it. You might fool some people. You might convince a few people that you're the opposite sex, but you're not. And you never will be. So, are you just trying to convince yourself at that point? But since you already know the truth, I don't think convincing yourself really means much. Apparently, you already believe it. So you're trying to now convince other people. You're trying to trick other people into believing that you're a different biological sex than how you were born. And I feel like without those people to fool, without that external input, of people looking at you and trying to identify what sex you are, without that validation, I feel like transgender people probably wouldn't really get any kind of sense of value that they achieve their goals of transitioning. So yeah, I think they're just trying to trick people. And some of that trickery comes in the ways of, well, if I go out to a bar, to a club, maybe I can get the opposite sex to try to flirt with me, to try to hook up with me. Maybe I can convince one of them to be attracted to me, maybe even try to sleep with me. Now, it's one thing to try to convince people, visually, that you're the opposite sex. But now, you're trying to convince people in a much more physical way that you're the opposite sex, when really, you might be able to fool them, but God forbid if somebody finds out the truth. There's a lot of straight people out there who have never thought about sleeping with another man, women who've never thought about sleeping with another woman, and yet these transgender people are out there actively trying to trick them into loving them, into sleeping with them, into getting in some kind of relationship with them. And most people that I would know, if they're looking for something serious, they're ultimately going to be looking to eventually have children. I mean, that's kind of the next logical step once you find someone that you want to be with for any kind of a long-term basis. Now, maybe trannies are just out for a good time. Maybe they're just trying to get some, and that's it. But if they're trying to find any kind of long-term lasting relationship through tricking someone, getting involved with somebody that can never have children, or at least not have children with you, I mean, it's messed up. And I'm saying it right now that they're trying to fool people. They're trying to trick people. They're not trying to do this just so that they can, feel better about themselves. Oh, I feel like a woman, so I want to look like a woman. No, that's not it. You want other people to think you're a woman. You want other people to validate that you're a woman. You want to trick people into having relationships with you. And that's going to make you feel more like a woman. Because you know the truth. There is no hiding from yourself. So without that external validation, what are you really? You're just the same sex you were born. I'd be pretty pissed if I went out and found a woman that I thought was attractive and we started hooking up, and then I found out that she was born a man. That's not okay. That's how someone gets hurt. Honestly. Because at that point, you're not beating up a woman, you're just beating up some man that looks like a woman. And trannies should be scared. They're advocating for all sorts of equal rights and this and that, but you're mental. You cannot physically change your biological sex. It's not possible. There's no technology anywhere that's going to allow you to rewrite your DNA. So, you can pretend, you can play dress up, you can do whatever you want. I don't actually care if trannies want to dress up like women or get implants or whatever and try to pretend that they're the opposite sex. I don't really care what they do until it starts involving me. Once you bring me into the equation, then I have to start abiding by your arbitrary rules. I need to start calling you, by your preferred pronouns and shit. And I'm not going to do it. As a matter of fact, I don't think most people are going to do it. I keep hearing all these things about, preferred pronouns, and there's like a jillion of them. People are not going to put up with that shit. They're just not going to do it. I mean, I don't care. You can legislate people till the cows come home. I'll tell you right now, once you start telling people they have to use all these weird pronouns like ziz and zer and all that weird shit, it's not going to happen. And I tell you what, they're going to pass they're going to go to their Congress people and they're going to say, look, get these fucking trannies the fuck out of here. Because they're fucking up my speech. So, leave the speech alone. You want to go play dress up? Go play dress up. But stop trying to fool people. Stop trying to trick people. You know, when you meet someone, you should shake their hand and say, look, I was born the opposite sex. But I'm mental, so this is how I feel better about myself. But I don't want to trick you. Okay, I'd respect that. I'd probably even call you by your preferred name. You know, rather than your name you were given at birth. But you got to be honest with people. You got to be just open about these kind of things. This article that I found right here, you know, here's a good one. Why trannies should stop trying to fuck us. You know, a guy obviously has written this, and this is an older article I found back from 2014, but it makes a good point. You know, it's basically making the point that, you know, stop trying to trick people into sleeping with you. Stop trying to fool people into having gay sex. Hell, a lot of trannies ain't even transition, which means they still rocking rock hard Johnson, and that ain't fun for the cisgendered among us. So let's go through this article here. I'm gonna read it to you. A small but politically vocal group of mentally ill men disguised as women are on the prowl and trying to have sex with heterosexual men. These trannies, as they're commonly called, don't believe being stealth in this way is deceptive because they feel that having their penises removed, taking hormones, and proclaiming that I am a woman is enough to become a real woman. And by being a real woman, they have the full right to violate straight men who wouldn't otherwise have sex with another man. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the trickery. You know, you feel so strongly that you're a woman, even though you're not. You got to trick people of the opposite sex into sleeping with you. Since the technology isn't yet available to repair their broken minds, society is being forced to become more tolerant of their illness. To accommodate their delusions, we've introduced new terminology like cisgender to avoid using offensive terms like biological when referencing real people. These types of precautions are being taken to protect trannies from triggers, which could remind them of the fact that they weren't born with the organs to produce ova, which is what a female technically is. Now, this article is pretty much just focusing on men that have transitioned into women. But, you know, I still don't think it's right the opposite way around, and I bet you there's a lot of women that would agree with me. They don't want to be tricked into fooling around with other women. Many TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, quietly object to trannies as well. And some, like lesbian activist and author Dr. Janice D. Raymond, have had the courage to step forward and condemn their covert manipulation. In her book, The Transsexual Empire, The Making of the She-Male, she writes, all transsexuals rape women's bodies by reducing the real female form to an artifact, appropriating this body for themselves. Transsexuals merely cut off the most obvious means of invading women so that they seem non-invasive. So, feminists even don't like these men pretending to be women. And don't even get me to the point of talking about sports and how men are participating in women's sports. That's a whole nother can of ridiculousness that I don't want to get into right now. But we'll save that for another video. She-males have tried to argue that our aversion for transsexualism is a byproduct of our gender roles, which according to them were assigned by artificial social constructs. First off, anyone who requires advanced medical procedures to realign their entire physiological makeup isn't in any position to deem what is or isn't natural. And secondly, despite their best efforts to abolish gender identity for their own sake, the evolutionary reactions for the distinction between male and female remain. If it weren't for sperm-producing males, ova-producing females, and the sexual attraction that evolved between the two, sex wouldn't happen, and humans wouldn't even exist. So, that's right. I mean, gender roles, don't get me started on gender anyways, with all these ridiculous roles that have been invented recently. You got two genders. You got male and female to coincide with biological sex. Gender is not some arbitrary thing that you can just decide. That's why they don't call it just gender. They call it gender roles. Do you understand? They have to mention gender roles, which means sex roles, which means you can pretend to be a different gender role if you want to, but people still know that they're male and female roles. So the gender itself is referring to one of the two. You can't just say gender and make up all these new terms and say there's a whole bunch of different genders. No, there might be a whole bunch of different roles, but there's not a whole bunch of different genders. Since many people secretly or openly are unaccepting of trannies, is there any place where they can find love and live in peace? Well, of course there is. There are plenty of people who are willing to suspend disbelief and accept them as whatever they claim to be. And there are a lot of gay and bisexual men who would be open to having sex with them. However, most straight, cisgender men don't fit into these categories and gag at the mere mention of kissing a so-called transgender woman. Even the most tolerant and liberal guys I know have said in private that they couldn't see themselves dating a so-called transgender woman and would break up with their girlfriend if they discovered she was born with a penis. But this is life, and in life not everyone is going to like you. Some people, for whatever reason, won't like Canadians. Some people won't like men. But one of the perks of living in a free society is that we can like or dislike whoever we wish, as long as we don't impede in their ability to live in peace or get a job. So that's essentially the article right there. And, you know, it makes a lot of good points. I'm not sure who this Matt is. I don't know if this is a good website, if Matt's a hardliner or something. So I just found this article by Googling. But I gotta say that he makes some good points there. You really don't want to try to trick the opposite sex into sleeping with you. And you should understand that if you do, then there could be consequences for you. And being open and honest, go out and look for those guys who don't mind sleeping with trannies. I'm sure there's all sorts of fetishes out there. In person, you walking around, if you want to pretend you're a woman visually, I think most people, they ain't gonna care too much as long as you ain't trying to do anything physical with them. They'll think you're probably a woman, which is alright. I mean, if that's the kind of validation you want, okay. But stop it there. Stop with the visual. Anytime you try to get close to somebody, you should probably let them know, because it could end up bad. But ultimately, I think it's a bigger mental issue, because you're ultimately pretending. You're pretending to be the opposite sex, and you're trying to find validation in other people. If you were on a planet or let's say an island, all by yourself, maybe you have a doctor there, and maybe he can transition you to the opposite sex. And then once he does, he's gone. And you're all by yourself on this island. Is anybody really going to care what you look like? Are you going to care what you look like? Are you going to care what body you're in at that point? Are you going to deal with the pain and suffering of the transition if the only one who's going to be able to see you like that is yourself? Is that good enough? Yeah, or do you need that external validation from other people? I guess only you can answer that, but I just, I get tired of this, these communities, these LGBT communities trying to push all of these gender terms, gender roles, gender identity. They're trying to push all this weird shit that has more to do with getting society to cope with other people's illness than it does with actually just having those people be accepted. They don't want to just have transgender people in society living life and belonging. No, they want to make sure everybody agrees with it. They want to make sure everybody is all right with it. They want to make sure that everybody puts up with it and abides by it, and all sorts of laws are created to get us to cope with it, and that's where I draw the line. That's, you can't change people's hearts and minds by trying to legislate things. So that's all I got. Let me know what you think. Sorry, I've been very busy lately. I haven't been able to put out videos as often as I hoped, but I'm going to try to get more out relatively often. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit like down at the bottom. Subscribe. I'm just getting started, but I got a lot of things to say. So I'll talk to you all soon.